Our New Testament reading and meditation text comes from John chapter 13, verses 1 through 17, and then verses 31b through 35. If you would like to follow along in the Pew Bible, that's on New Testament page 107. John 13, 1 through 17, 31b through 35. Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash, except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I've done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." Moving to verse 31b. Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me. And as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." This is the word of the Lord. So this past Sunday, we celebrated Palm Sunday, Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And our central focus was the reality that most, if not all, of those celebrating Jesus were celebrating a drastically different ideal than who Jesus was, than what Jesus was about and what Jesus stood for. They were settling for something that they hoped was the truth, but it was far below the reality of the God in the flesh that stood before them. Today, we celebrate Maundy Thursday, where Jesus demonstrated to his disciples even more of what he was really about. And once again, we see Jesus' followers attempt to force him to settle for something far less than who he really is. So tonight, we will try to understand that. We'll try to root it out of ourselves, those places where we attempt to force Jesus to be something different than he really is, the same way the disciples did. In this account, we see Jesus gathering for dinner not long before his own would betray him. And right in the middle of the feast, right as it's getting going, Jesus gets up from the table, takes off his outer robe, and ties a towel around himself, beginning washing the disciples' feet. He comes to Peter and has what we likely consider an odd exchange. Why is Peter so opposed to what Jesus is doing? Because Peter has certain expectations of Jesus. In Peter's mind, Jesus is going to be the one that ushers in a new reality for Israel, a reality that will make their country elite and set up Peter and the other disciples in positions of power and prestige. Instead of staying in that lane, accepting the sort of power that the world offers him, Jesus all out shuns it. He takes off his robe, the robe that would have indicated he was a Jewish rabbi, and he put on the outfit of the lowliest servant in the household. And if that wasn't bad enough, then he began to do the task of the lowliest servant, washing everybody's dirty, stinky, disgusting feet. When Peter tells him, "You will never wash my feet," it isn't an act of humility. It's a demand that Jesus be who Peter demands Jesus to be. The sovereign king of Israel, maybe even the emperor of Israel, not a lowly servant. That's not what Peter expects. Jesus is the real king of Israel, but not the way Peter and the others insist that he be. The kingdom he is establishing is going to look way different from anything they can imagine. I often wonder if when we hear about what Jesus' kingdom is about, we come away thinking it will be weak. Just because Jesus' kingdom doesn't amass weapons and a military, don't translate that as weakness. Here Peter, and let's be honest, the whole room, because Peter is just speaking for the room, they try to push Jesus from the way the Father is leading him. And it's at moments like this that we see Jesus can be powerful without being violent. If Peter can't get Jesus to do what he's originally requested, then he'll get him to alter the mission in some way. Not only my feet, but my hands and my head too. To this, Jesus remains steadfast. And he's essentially saying, I have to do this act, Peter. You don't get to change the mission that my Father has given me. But after Jesus finishes this task, he retakes his position. He puts his robe back on, symbolizing that he is now once again their rabbi. He's their teacher. And he tells them that if he is able to serve them by humbling himself, they are able to serve others by doing the same. You aren't above the tasks that I can do, Jesus says. So the question for us on this night is, so what is Jesus about, and what does a life following him look about based on this exchange? We gather on this year every night during this week to remind ourselves the nature of the King that we follow and the nature of the kingdom he is establishing. It's an upside-down kingdom, a kingdom in which we experience love from the King and we pass love on to everyone else. It's a kingdom with a very unique way to get ahead. The way you get ahead in this kingdom is to serve and to love. So tonight, I want us to think about how we get what we want out of life. Just maybe everything we have heard about getting ahead outside of what Jesus has said is wrong. What if we really took to heart that the way to get what we want out of life is to humble ourselves, taking on the nature of a servant, and living in a way that demonstrates that we have received love from a King that is unlike anybody else that we have ever seen. This is the kind of life that challenges us, that changes us, and changes the world around us. That is the life Jesus lives, and the life that he calls us to live following him. It isn't a life of settling. It's a life that Jesus claims offers us more than we could get any other way. Are we going to take him up on his dare? Are we going to listen to what he says? Or are we going to continue to say, I think I got this. I think I know what I need to do. Jesus offers another way.
Become part of a community that seeks to glorify God, to make disciples of Jesus Christ, and meet human needs. Join us at First Presbyterian Sundays at 8:30 and 10:55, or watch us on My 11 every Sunday morning at 9. We welcome you. Come